It is so wonderful to see a return of so many faces visiting us. People returning back from vacation, back from Chicago, back from Israel. My daughter is back from Camp Alonim. These were all successful trips, and it's great to see the courtyard starting to fill up. I have to tell you that every year, right around this time, and right around Pesach time, people ask me a question of why the Torah doesn't align with the holidays as they would presume that it would, which always strikes me because I'm taught to believe that the Torah does align perfectly with the Jewish calendar, but when you stand on the outside looking in, right, one might think that Pesach would come at the beginning of Sefer Shmot when we're learning about the Exodus. One might think that Rosh Hashanah would come at the beginning of Breshit when we're thinking about Genesis. And instead, both of those important holidays, the anchors for the year, we break out and go back to the section that we want to read from rather than the annual holiday. In fact, we do that for every holiday. We break away and read special sections, not just the weekly section. This year, for the first time, I'm reading these parshiot of Devarim and Va'edchanan and Akev, even next week, Re'eh, as aligning perfectly with what we are supposed to feel as Jews this time of year. Moses warning us that we have choices to make in our lives, both big and small. We saw today, right, we celebrated somebody making the choice to get married. I understand there are other couples with us who are soon to be married as well. Mazel tov to you. These are the biggest choices in life that we make. But Moses this week would argue the Torah explains that the choices that guide our lives are not just in the big choices we make, they're also in the small choices that we make as well. Who we associate with, right? It never stops, not since junior high school. The friends that you are standing around, you are judged by. The place where you choose to live, you are judged by. The people whom you choose to have relationship with, even beyond your partner, you are judged by. This morning, I chose to study out of the Chumash that belonged to my grandfather, Simon Lebovitz. You'll hear more and more about this 2-month trip to Chicago and about the great divvying up of things in the house that have occurred. And so I end up with this set of Mikraot Gedolot from my grandfather. And today, instead of studying out of my set of Mikraot Gedolot, I decided to study out of his set of Mikraot Gedolot, which is essentially the Chumash with lots of different commentaries of the greatest hits all around, right? To be included in the Mikraot Gedolot, you have to be a tremendously influential rabbi and dead for probably at least 1,000 years. And in it, Rashi, on the very first verse of this, of course, says something brilliant. And the words Vahaya Ekev Tishma'un. And if you obey these rules, Rashi says the reason that Moses uses that language, Ekev, like the heel, like a person's heel, like Yaakov was born holding onto the heel of his brother. The reason Moses uses that is because most rules and mitzvahs and commandments in life, people trample on them with their heels without second thought because they are not the big ones. Not the big ones. It's a funny thing because leading up to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we're in a mindset to get ready for big days, the high holy days. And yet, every single week we gather and we read out of the Torah, and we have this idea of sanctity as a community. And in fact, each and every day, we're supposed to pray and remind ourselves about not the lesser ideas, but the more mundane ideas that guide us as Jews. Every day we can't recite Unetana Tokef and think about who's going to live and who's going to die. But every day we should recite the Shema and be reminded that we are in fact one large family. We don't need to treat every person like our partner or our spouse. We shouldn't. But we should treat people like our family. That is, if you treat your family well. If you don't, then you should treat your people better than your family. Rashi's comment leads me to an idea that there aren't big rules and small rules, and there aren't high holy days and regular days. What we're trying to aspire to as a Jewish people is that every day is considered to be a holy day. Every day is an opportunity to express the importance of Torah and Israel and our peoplehood and our familyhood to one another. It shouldn't just be when we come together on the 1st and 2nd and 10th of Tishrei. And Moses, in these parshiot of Devarim and Va'etchanan and Ekev, reminds us again and again and again, as he's about to leave us, that the choice is up to us. What happens to our Judaism is up to us. What happens to our family is up to us. What happens to our children is up to us. So much so that next week, after 3 weeks of talking about it, he begins by saying, Re'eh, look, I'm tired of talking about this. I'm going to have to say it as bluntly as possible. So I guess I will say it as bluntly as possible as well. The high holidays are coming, and they're really special. But the way we lead into the high holidays is just as important as what happens on that first morning of Rosh Hashanah. That's why we blow the shofar every morning leading up to Rosh Hashanah. It's because these days are what's important. The way that we commit ourselves to this community in all sorts of ways is really important right now. The way that we commit ourselves to our families ahead of the holidays is really important right now. Moses has been reminding us this for weeks. I thought I would take the opportunity to remind all of us this one time that maybe, just maybe, the high holidays will seem even the more special if we try to make each day a little bit higher, a little bit more holy, a little bit more special, a little bit more imbued with Torah. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.